Hi, I'm J. Albert Mann. I'm a young adult writer, and I'm here to talk about the Degenerates with my daughter Grace Mann and the concept album we're building around the book, thanks to Alice Wong and the Disability Visibility Project and the Disability Visibility Circle Grant. So, the Disability Visibility Project is a community of disabled activists, and I'm a disabled writer. And this book highlights a very important piece of disability history. So, Grace, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. My name is Grace Mann. I'm a songwriter, creative producer, and member of the pop soul group Big Stuff. I'm also the writer of the concept album for The Degenerates. Recently, I worked at the Times Square Alliance doing public programming on the Times Square plazas. I was never a huge theater buff, but working so close to Broadway, it was hard not to become a little immersed in the industry. After reading the final version of The Degenerates, I was still working there, and it sparked the idea for the concept album. Right away, I could see the characters on stage singing, emoting, and coming to life. And I'm so excited to be here sharing what we've worked on.
It's great. So, I'm really happy that you're here doing it as well. So before we get to the first song, I will tell you a little bit about the book. So The Degenerates is about four young women who have been in 1928 who have been caught up in the eugenics movement. And the eugenics movement was a social science at the time. It is now no longer a science. And it really was a way to tag people who were society thought was valuable or those who were not as valuable. And on the list that were people who were not valuable were the disabled folks. And so all the disabled folks in America, were hundreds of thousands, were rounded up and institutionalized for life. And this was a way to take them out of the community and to make sure that they didn't procreate. And it was a weird, like, social Darwinism that they thought that if they squirreled away all the disabled folks and didn't let them procreate, that over time, disability would, all the traits that were not desirable would be gone from humans. So it was a pretty horrific movement. It did a lot more than round up disabled folks. It rounded up all types of marginalized folks. So the LGBT Q plus community, and of course, Black and Brown folks, all the people that even today might also be rounded up if we decided to do this again. And so this book is about four characters, and here it is: London, Alice, Maxine, and Rose. So do we want to play the first song, Grace?
Sure. So I built the album around the four characters, and first up we have London. I really wanted this song to capture both her grit, but also her soft side. London is a character who really wears herself on her sleeve. You know exactly who she is. And that actually made the song almost even harder to write because I had a lot to work with. And so I hope you enjoy. And here's London's song.
I wanna carry the world into the fire. Wrap my arms around the basket, feeling inspired. Join the devil in his mischievous ways. You say all I do is misbehave. All I know is that I'm making way. They took it away. Maybe it was for the best, like to lower the stakes. What's the point of letting anybody in?
Wow, Grace, that was really phenomenal. We should also take out a moment and introduce Franklin Rankin.
Of course. So Franklin Rankin, as you saw him in the video, is playing guitar. He helped with the development of this concept album, lending a lot of help with the harmony, and he is a part of Big Stuff as well, the pop soul group that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. All right, so can you tell us a little bit about your process in character development, where you start, where you end, and all the in between?
Well, the characters obviously are where I start with every book, and with the Degenerates, it was really hard because a lot of times you want to, you have a main character that seems to be pretty standard, and when I started, I had a main character which was London, but I really felt that when I was doing my research that there were almost no voices. So you heard, I read so much written from the doctors, from the nurses, from the superintendents of these institutions, from people who studied the institutions. Even family members had a voice with their families members inside these institutions, but who didn't have a voice were the people inside the institutions. There's almost none. I could find one account of a gentleman who lived through the institution and did end up running away, but it was his account from when he was in his 80s. And of course, he was a child in the institution. So I felt that was the only story I could find. So when I went to write it, I thought I just need more voices. I don't want one experience inside this institution. So that is why I did a multiple POV and wanted to get more than a single experience inside of the institution. And how I came up with my 4 characters are, I just was researching, and I would come upon different, mostly it was the doctor's notes, just giving me examples of, people they had all this data on them. So they would take down every single thing that happened to them. Like they would measure their heads, they would measure their arms and legs, they would measure their intelligence over and over. They would, even measure the things they ate and then say what they ate. And, they just took all this data, but there was almost nothing about them personally.
Mhm.
And then when I would come across it, it would be striking. So I would write it down. And where I got London's character was this doctor had been writing about this patient, and I'd been reading about the patient, and they said that they had this one terrible habit that they couldn't break of the patient. And that was that she would behave fine, and that, but all of a sudden, if somebody was drinking tea, she would go and flip the person's elbow, and then the tea would, of course, spill all over that person. And they said they could just didn't understand why she did it, and also that that they couldn't stop her from doing it. And I just thought, it didn't take a medical degree to understand why someone would do this when everything in your life is controlled and measured and watched and written down. That this was just a little bit of something that they controlled. So every once in a while, when they felt a little bit frustrated, I'm sure they just went over and tipped an elbow and made the world spill their tea a little bit. And
Yeah.
so of course, in the book, London does a lot more than tip an elbow, but she's definitely my elbow tipper.
Yeah.
And then there was another character I read about, and that it was about a young girl, and all she did was look at ants and insects. Like she was really into insects, and they kept saying, oh, she has an unnatural attraction to insects, an unnatural attraction to insects. And I just thought, would we say that about Darwin, that he had an unnatural, attraction to hummingbirds? No. When a man has an attraction, he's a scientist. Anyway, this young girl, I'm sure, never got to be a scientist, but obviously that's probably where she belonged. And so I built Rose out of that.
Yeah. Interesting that you took notes from someone who was dehumanizing these young women and turned it into just these beautiful human characters with so many different sides to them.
Yeah, exactly. Like every time I saw these like little glimpses of their humanity, like it's
Mhm.
almost like the doctors and nurses were trying not to write it, but every once in a while something would, I guess, interest them above and beyond the
Mhm.
circumference of their heads. And then, and you just got a glimpse into the life, right,
Yeah.
Grace, that was
Yeah.
there. And, and that's what I wanted to, yes, I wanted to bring that out because
Yeah.
that is the point, is that these people, these were these people's lives.
Yeah. All right. So should we go into the next song?
Sure, that would be great, but we can go ahead and introduce Maxine a little bit. I can do that. So Maxine's a little bit of the dreamer.
Mhm.
She's the one who doesn't quite, she doesn't quite she doesn't quite live in reality. She's always dreaming about, she's always dreaming about Alice, and the, our, the, the another of the characters, and she's always dreaming about escaping, and she's always dreaming about home and the place that she was sent away from.
Mhm. Yeah, this one was the first song that I actually wrote of the concept album. It came really easily to me. I just felt like the way that Maxine presented herself was very lyrical, the way that she thought. And I think that this one is definitely one of my favorites and really hits the heart for me at least.
There was love, I swear, in the shadows of rough hands. There was love in there, behind reverence and discipline. There was love, I know, I hope there was. I swear there was love somewhere. Soon she'll come when the boys have grown. It was just too much, but she'll come for us. And the memory of who I was and why she let us go will be just a dream, like my dreams of home. Soon she'll come when the boys have grown. It was just too much, but she'll come for us. And the memory of who I was and why she let us go will be just a dream, like my dreams of home.
Wow, that was really beautiful, Grace. And Maxine, I think, gets you because as the dreamer, she's the least, she lives the least in reality. And so when you think about London and Alice and even Rose, they kind of see things the way that they are. And Maxine is the most, I would not say the weakest at all, but she is definitely the most vulnerable
Hmm.
of all four of them.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yes, her heart is out there and it's ready to be pierced.
Yeah.
And I feel like those three other characters try so hard to protect Maxine
Hmm.
from the world that they live in. And of course, it just, you know, Maxine has to learn how to protect herself.
Yeah.
So,
And the
yeah.
other, I think the most beautiful thing about Maxine is that those three other characters wouldn't be who they are if Maxine didn't dream, you know? They
Yes,
really wouldn't.
yes, yes.
So
Yeah,
I think that's really beautiful. Like they are always trying to protect her while I think in a way she protects them with the way that she thinks. And so I just think Maxine's character is beautifully written.
Yes, so she keeps the hope alive in a place
Exactly.
that, really tries to kill the hope.
Hmm.
So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the songwriting process. I talked a little bit about my developing my characters, and so of course I developed these characters. You read them, and then can you talk a little bit about just generally, the songwriting process, and how you see it maybe different or similar to the process I talked about with writing.
Definitely. It has been such a different experience writing from the perspective of a fictional character. I studied songwriting in undergrad and, of course, learned to write stories that weren't necessarily my own, but I always had creative control over who it was. I was creating my own characters. And during this process, I already had the characters handed to me. And so my favorite part was extracting the emotion behind the words you wrote and finding my own to fit the format of a song, which is different than having a full length novel to express yourself. Um, Currently, I'm working on Rose's song and rereading each of her chapters and picking out words and phrases that stand out to me, anything that screams Rose. And I'll take those and pull and stretch them until I have 5, 6, 7 lines, all from that one word or phrase. As a songwriter, I love working from a single line and forming an entire story around that. For example, Maxine's song was formed around the line, her mother knew she couldn't get to them, not yet. She says this when dreaming of her mother coming to save her and Rose from the institution. She knows it won't happen, but she still dreams of all the reasons why it hasn't happened yet and why her mother is waiting for the right time. I wanted her to sing about the love she so desperately wanted from her mother, but I also wanted the audience to walk away knowing that Maxine knew that her mother wasn't coming. And so that was definitely my favorite part of this process and this new type of songwriting, which I haven't experienced before, is taking a single line that you wrote and seeing how far I can pull it and how far I can stretch that emotion into verses and a chorus.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Grace. Yeah, it's almost like I guess it's a little like, poetry that you really
Mhm.
have to shake it down to the essence. And it is true, like that when you write a book, you have many, many words that you can use to get your point across. And you can do it 3 times in a row. And where with songwriting, you really do have to kind of like crunch it down to
Mhm.
its very essence. And I think you did a fantastic job with Maxine. And I think you're right. I think lyrically she was being the dreamer. She was the easiest probably, or the most fun. I won't say
Yes,
easy.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
but I was never easy.
All right, so how about we talk a little bit about Alice? That's our final song of the night. The song is based around the routine that these girls went through every single day. Mom, can you tell us a little bit about that and how you wrote about living through trauma?
Well, Alice is the character who actually has been in the institution the longest. So she was the first one to arrive of the 4 of them. And Alice, because she is Black, that there weren't a lot of Black children in the institution, and so she was, pretty alone there. And so she kind of made herself very small, and she made herself almost fit in with the routine. So the institution was all about routine. So it was everyone woke up at the exact same time, everyone got dressed at the exact same time. And I think one of the most, you know, the horrifying aspect of their life is they actually all went to the bathroom at the same time. And so they would take these bathroom breaks where they would go in groups. So they lived their entire life in these groups, going to bed, waking up, eating, and then even relieving themselves. They would be led into a bathroom all at once, and they would have 10 minutes to relieve themselves. So you didn't even have the choice of when to move your bowels on your own. And they chose what you ate. They chose, what job you performed. And I think for Alice, she kind of crawled into this routine. And at the same time that it was completely beating her down, it was also creating like a way for her to kind of survive every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at the same time that it was slowly killing her, it was, she came to see it as a comfort.
Yeah.
In a strange way, where, the opposite of that would be London just, couldn't deal with that routine at all.
Yeah.
Being told what to do and when to do it was, it wasn't that it wasn't a comfort to her. She actually couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Where Alice kind of crawled into it. And so for Alice, her character really needed, she really needed to disengage from the awful routine of the institution.
Yeah. And we really see that in the ending too. I think her finally having to be forced out of that routine. All right, so let's play the song.
I hear the whistle blow before it's through their teeth. Minutes pass, only lasting long enough to breathe. I don't mind long as I stay aside unseen in the river of routine. The river of routine, I've learned to swim with ease. The river of routine has swallowed me. The river of routine, I've learned to swim with ease. The river of routine has swallowed me. My body's held together with words I never say. Arms, legs, and fingertips bound like poetry. Even if I whisper, feel it like a scream in the river of routine. The river of routine, I've learned to swim with ease.
Wow, it's so wonderful to hear those songs again in this setting.
Yeah, I love Alice's song. You know, there's such, I mean, there's such I don't know, there's such strength of all the characters. Like she ends up being this very quiet strength. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I just hear that in the song that you wrote. So we're as we wrap up, I thought I would ask you a few more questions. So why don't we go ahead and say, since you know you are music and I'm writing, let's talk about what we're reading and what we're listening to. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, like, what are you listening to?
All right, so right now I actually have been listening to the new John Mayer EP, which is surprising. I haven't listened to John Mayer a lot in the past, but I have really enjoyed his new EP, Last Train Home. I just feel like it has uh, this very like sweet melodic vibe with this also interesting upbeat rhythmic aspect to it, which I've been enjoying a lot. How
Well,
about you? What have you been listening to?
been listening to I've been listening to the songs of Joe Hill because I've been working on a book about a labor history, nonfiction. The United States' labor history, and Joe Hill was a very famous songwriter for the IWW. And although the strange thing about Joe Hill songs are that you know, we have no recordings of him singing them. So you actually can't hear him sing his own songs, but I've been listening to
Oh,
other people sing his songs, and that's got to be good enough because that's all we've got. So
that's interesting. I feel like you put mine to shame, but that's okay.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I guess it's, yeah, because like a lot of writers get asked, like, you know, are they listening to music while they write and things like that, and for their characters, and do they, does that feed their writing? And
Mhm.
it's, for me, that's actually, if anything, if I'm doing historical fiction, I'll listen to the music of the times, you know, just to kind of get you into that feeling. But when it comes to like listening to music while I write, if anything, it's just background.
Yeah, of course. I think one interesting thing as a songwriter is I don't listen to as much music, I think, as people would presume, because I'm always writing my own music and thinking about that. And of course, I love listening to music, but it's definitely not a 24/7 thing, as I think most people would think.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that too, because as a writer, a lot of times if somebody asks, oh, like what are you writing, and I start to describe, they're like, oh my gosh, you should read this and this and this. They're so similar, and I think that's the last thing I want to do right now. Like
Exactly.
I just like,
Exactly.
I'll read books that have nothing to do with what I'm
Yeah.
writing, or an aside, and that's the way I would enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so yeah, so what are you reading, Grace?
Well, actually, my brother just got me this book, Your Son. It's Select Writings by Clara Zetkin. We have a family discussion group, and we read an essay by her that I really enjoyed. And so he went out of his way to get me a whole book of it, and I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, you picked a pretty serious book.
I
Uh,
thought I would,
I know I picked pretty too
John
serious.
Mayer, Claire Zetkin.
Yeah. So today I just finished Stamped, and it's by Jason Reynolds, and of course it was taken from Ibn Kendi's book, the original book, which was Stamped from the Beginning,
Mhm.
and it's a YA version of his book Stamped from the Beginning, and it's all about the history of racism in America, and it was pretty stinking good. So, and then I'm also reading. Because I have an upstairs book and a downstairs book. So all that really means, because I live on a boat, so there is no upstairs and downstairs, but it means I have a book by my bed and then a book by the coffee table. So that's how I do it. But anyway, and then so that Stamped was my coffee table book. That's what I'm reading in the day.
Okay.
And then at night, I'm still not done. I'm reading Everybody, a book about freedom by Olivia Lang, and this is adults. Stamped was for young adults, and this is an adult about the human body, which I, being a disabled writer, and I was born with a physical disability. And so I'm always interested in the body and, you know, how we live in our bodies. And that's what the
Mm.
book is about. So it's pretty cool.
So one more question that we can just toss back and forth, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how we're both artists and what it's been like learning and growing from each other's experiences in the artistic world and creative world.
Yes, well, as a mother-daughter, I will say that, as Grace knows, a lot of times when she's songwriting, I really want to get in on it. So I'm like, okay, so what are you writing? Oh, how about this word? How about that word? And I totally just jump in on that game. And I know nothing about songwriting. And although I've been learning a little bit through you, which is really interesting. Um, but yeah, I kind of get in on your game a little bit. And I have to say, like, you're really good. You don't try to get in on my game, although
I do try to edit your work all the time. I'm like, send it to me, I'll edit it.
and you're really good at getting. I mean, that's true, actually. That's how, if we work together, I am a busybody and get in your way, and you actually help me.
I love that's what we landed on in this question. I love that.
about,
Um,
about both being artists. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that one wonderful thing about it is that we can really support each other in a real way because we understand what each person is going through when it comes to failure and success, and just understanding what success and failure mean to each other. Being both artists, I think it's like a different experience than another mother-daughter pair might experience.
No, that is so true. I mean, and to be perfectly honest, when we were going to be doing this today, I called Grace ahead of time and was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I just, like, why are we bothering? No one cares about our art. And I began to sink into the muck. And, Grace raised me right up by, just telling me her own stories of woe, and how, just how we all feel that as artists, that we're operating in this void. And that, but at the same time, I think that, art is important, and we need to keep working, and we need to keep each other working. And so I think that is a really special thing, that we can be there for each other, and in the good moments as well, not just the bad.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just finish up by saying that uh, I think that this book is so important. And if you haven't read it yet, you should go out, buy a copy. We will be posting the songs on SoundCloud as well, so you can check those out and experience reading it and also listening to it at the same time. And I just hope that you enjoyed what we had to say today.
Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks again to Alice Wong and the Disability Visibility
Yes,
Project.
thank you so much for allowing this project to come to life.
Yes. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.